Hi, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of the Wealth Cafe. And I am incredibly excited for this episode today. I am joined by the incredible Ruth Rathblott. And to give you a little bit more insight of who she is the specialist, the queen when it comes to talking about unhiding. And so, to give you background on her, if you've ever asked yourself this question, do you feel the need to hide part of yourself or to force yourself to fit in? So, what if the very thing hiding us is holding us back from connection, opportunity, and thriving? I can definitely relate to so much of this. So, I'm excited to dive into it. For today's conversation, we are going to challenge you on how you see yourself and those around you. It will also challenge you to be self reflective and shift how you think about hiding. And it's important to see what is possible when we stop unhiding from who we really are. And our speaker, Rath, she knows firsthand exactly what that is like. For years, she hid part of herself, believing it made life easier. Then she discovered something life-changing. Unhiding was actually the key to freedom, connection, and belonging. She is a TEDx speaker, best-selling author of Single-Handedly and Unhide and Seek, which are both fabulous books. I recommend that you read them. And she is a sought after expert on creating spaces where people feel truly seen, heard, and valued. With insight, humor, and heart, she is going to take us on a transformative journey. And we are going to talk today all about money and how to unhide from who we truly are when it comes to our money. Ruth, thanks so much for hopping on.
I am so excited to be here, Caroline, and talk money because it's one of those things that people absolutely do hide, probably one of the top three.
Yeah.
So, finances.
Oh, it's all the time. It's amazing too. And especially as women, we hide from it so much, whether it's money, talking about finances, talking about wealth, the whole gamut.
Even what we get paid, we hide,
Yeah.
right? Like, or what we don't get paid, we hide.
Yeah.
So,
What is
yeah,
it? We're supposed to say watermelons. You don't get paid in dollars.
right, right. Well, that could be a whole nother
That's a
conversation.
whole episode in itself. But I also think, and I know this personally, and I'd love for you to share the story with those that are watching, you have a really formative experience that you had as a child when it came to seeing money with your parents. And we all have these money stories. But I would love to, whatever extent you feel comfortable, to share what that was like with money and how you hid and you learned to hide from money growing up.
Yes, money was in my family, Caroline, growing up, something that always had some heat around it, right? It was something that it was supposed to be hidden and yet not talked about, or it was supposed to be discovered. Like that, if you were hiding money, like there was this whole space around intrigue around money and
Mhm.
how it was this thing we don't talk about. And it's interesting. My parents came from kind of two different backgrounds with it, in terms of my mom came from a space where money was something you spend, but then you don't kind of think about it. Like you don't talk about it, you don't think about it. And my father came from a mindset of you do talk about money and you're practical about it and you save. And when those two uh, people come together, it's not always a healthy conversation around money. And so for me, what I witnessed growing up was my mom overspending and spending, and definitely then feeling the need to hide it, whether it was the purchases she made, Caroline, putting them into her trunk of her car and sneaking them into the house, so witnessing that as a child, or when bills would come, me as a child going down to the mailbox to then bring them back up to the house in a way that was hidden so that
Mhm.
my father wouldn't know. And then the ultimate was when the bills then came, there was a blow up in terms of how could you be spending this much money? What did that look like? And I will say it was a real lesson in how we don't money is can feel explosive. It's you hide it, and then when you have to deal with it, it can feel like an explosion.
That is, it's interesting too that you share this story because I feel like now it's a joke on social media, right? Of how many times have you seen people where it's like, and it's always a woman who they're
Mm.
taking the bags or the Amazon packages and hiding them, and it's, we have to feel this type of shame, and that's probably because so many of us, as we were growing up, we were taught that you had to hide these things and be in shame about them, but reality, it's more about like having, if your parents had had that communication around money, that also could have changed a lot of things for you.
100%. And I think that there's probably an added layer to it also, Caroline, right? There's the idea of when you're a homemaker, because my mom stayed at home raising kids, what's the value of that and what can she spend and what couldn't she spend? And so I think there's a piece with that too, in terms of that image that we see of the woman at home with the Amazon packages and overspending or spending or just spending. Sometimes it's just spending for something that they want, and that feeling of needing to keep it hidden, needing to hide it.
Which is so interesting. I was reading an article yesterday that talked about the cost, or the cost, or they put a number around unpaid labor of, people who are, especially women, are primarily stay-at-home moms. Typically, we're starting to see that shift a little bit with more stay-at-home dads, but it's considered to be $1 trillion unpaid industry for the amount of work that caretakers do in the home. So it's like we sit here and it's like, oh, you should feel ashamed, you should feel bad. Do you know like the value of what it is that whichever parent, I'll even say, is at home, like what they are offering is, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's if they got paid per hour, not even, I mean, ideally more than minimum wage, but if they got paid by that, yeah, they would be making so much money.
Yeah.
So yet it's something that we still are wrestling with.
And so I also love too that you talk about, yes, there's unhiding with your money and there's unhiding with also connection. And I notice that a lot too of, as women, we don't talk about money a lot, or wealth, or we're so quick to share every other aspect of our lives, but when it comes to money and wealth is when we hide. From your expertise, how can we start to unravel that unhiding? And I also then want to dive into like, what are the benefits of it?
Sure. So I think one of the sources of why we hide is shame and fear, right? Like
Mhm.
that's the genesis of it is we either learned it and there's shame around money, or there's fear about talking about money, in terms of somebody will reject me, somebody will judge me. I've had people share with me, I don't talk about my financial situation either because it's difficult in terms of it. I'm not in a good financial situation, so I hide that for fear of being judged. And there's an opposite extreme to it, Caroline, too, where people don't want to talk about how much wealth they have because they're afraid of the judgment or people thinking that they don't need anything or they don't need support because they have money. And what's interesting about the conversation with money and unhiding is sometimes it takes others to help you through that, right? Like it's interesting when I was, and this is where my money journey kind of paused and started to unhide and unravel, was when I moved to New York and I was living with two roommates, and they had very good money habits and very good money sense. And money wasn't a difficult subject to talk about when the rent was due or when our Con Ed bill was due or our, cable bill was due. It was black and white. It wasn't an emotional thing. And yet I had grown up with money as an emotional thing. We don't talk about it. Just slip the bill, slip the payment. Don't talk about it.
Mhm.
And these two women were so, again, so conscious and level-headed, and it wasn't an emotional thing to talk about money. And that was my first time being able to unhide with it and say, here are some of my concerns, here's some of my challenges. And they normalized it, and it just felt so. I share that because that's really the second step of unhiding. Is first is acknowledging it, right? This is where what I'm feeling, this is what comes up for me when I talk about money, why I'm feeling the need to hide it. So acknowledging, how's it holding me back, how's it holding me back from connecting or having those quote unquote normal conversations about money and rent and etc. And then the second was the idea of inviting someone in. So those two women were that place for me to be able to just say, oh, it's just money. If we don't have it this month, what are we going to do? Like what, being able to have those conversations. That's the second step to unhiding. And that's where for me, it was transformational, is just having a healthy space for money conversations.
I thank you for sharing all of that because it is part of the, okay, so here's how we grew up learning about money, right? And then we have to undo a lot of what we learned and saw before. For me in my life, I had my grandparents grew up in the Great Depression. I spent a lot of time with them growing up, so I learned a lot of the like the scarcity, like save every rubber band, save every this. And that takes a lot of time to unlearn. But you're right. The first part is acknowledging it and then saying, okay, how do we start to change it? And I feel like I'd love to hear how you feel about this, but it's an everyday thing. It starts to normalize, but there's still little times where I'm like, we don't need to save every rubber band. It's gonna be okay.
Well, and I think that shows up a lot when you're a solopreneur and an
Yes.
entrepreneur, right? Because there isn't that steady paycheck that's coming in or that healthcare that's just automatic that you kind of don't even look at your checking account every day. But when you're a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, that money conversation and that money mindset, and I even think about that narrator, that self narrator, who is sometimes unreliable in terms of the conversations she has about money, like saving that rubber band or oh, should I eat out or should I not eat out? Like sometimes those conversations come up a lot more when you're building a business.
It's it's interesting. Somebody posted really in my social media time right now, had shared something and it was like the most accelerated self-discovery journey you'll have is starting a business. And I was like, oh my, because you're spending so much time with yourself, your money mindset is challenged to no end. And you're sitting here, you're having to ask these tough questions and having to do all of the work, but in a shortened period of time.
Absolutely. And that's why the work that you do, Caroline, is so important because it's the idea of how do we have those conversations about money? How do we start to lay out a plan? How does it feel not so overwhelming? And it's inviting, again, it's the second step. It's inviting someone in to be to start the conversation so you don't feel so alone in it.
Mhm.
That's the gift of what you're offering.
Yeah. And I also appreciate how you're building community through this, right? Through the concept of unhiding. And you had mentioned too in the beginning that money is one of the three ways that the three biggest ways that we hide. What are the other two? I have to know.
Yeah, no, it's mental health is absolutely at the top of the list in terms of people hide their mental health around their depression, their anxiety, even neurodiversity, their ADHD, their dyslexia. Like that is a space that people hide. And I would say the other place is people hide their dreams and aspirations.
Ooh.
Another big piece of it in terms of being afraid of somebody saying, and it definitely ties into money because people fear that idea of, oh, I want to have this, I want to build a movement, I want to build a beach house, I want to do that, like all those things, and yet most of them require money,
Mhm.
and they're also sometimes met with, oh, well, you can't do that, or you're better off not doing that, and so people hide their dreams and aspirations for fear of that judgment and rejection. And yet if we opened up, just like mental health, just like money, if we opened up, we might get the support that we need or the accountability that we need to do these.
Mm. That's interesting too. It's the accountability piece, right? I will say the accountability, and I'm sure you get this running your own business as well, the fear of failure, right? Of, oh my gosh, if I say this is my dream and this is the thing that I want, what if I either don't get it or what if I fail?
Yeah. Yeah. And businesses do fail. It's
Yep.
okay. And I have a great coach who said to me recently, said, you know what? Sometimes it's not failure. It just means stop to refuel to bring in some income so that you can keep building that dream. And that's not, we don't talk about that. We think that everybody has to be a success, but what are the spaces? And I just heard this quote last night, which is the idea of our failures, quote unquote, are actually the things that push us to the next thing,
Mm.
right? When things are going so smoothly, we're not challenged to think about next in the same way. Like, or we don't spend time figuring out what went wrong or what went
Mhm.
right. We're just coasting in some ways. But when things hit a bump, it's when we actually have to look inward and examine, hey, what's going on? How can I change this? How can I shift it?
And it's interesting because in those times of failure is then when you have to unhide and when you have to and you're forced to step out and do that reflection, like you said, and look back and say, okay, why didn't I get the promotion? Why didn't I land the client? Why didn't we, save enough to send the kids to college? Like all of these different things. And if everything's going smoothly, we don't stop and say, like, oh, like this is so
Right.
nice. Maybe at the end of the year and we reflect and we're like, oh, what a great year. Like cheers and move on. But other than that, we just keep going and barreling through.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's insane. The other part too about dreams, it's amazing how little we take time to even with ourselves. I don't know if you've found this, but to admit what our real dreams are.
Yeah. Yeah. It's part of what I like to do vision boards. So this is going to sound probably a little woo-woo right now, but that's okay.
Bring
I
it
think
on.
your audience and your listeners can hear it. Is there's the space around meditation that I spend time in. I spend time doing vision boards and journaling. And it's about the space of thinking of what do I want, right? What does my life look like? And again, that same business coach, Caroline, recently said to me, I was like, I really want to marry my travel life and my speaking life together. Like, how do I
Mm.
do that? And he's like, why are we not building that business? Why are we
Ooh,
building the business? Yeah. Why are we building the business that everybody else has?
yeah.
Why are we building that business where you're traveling and you're connecting and you're meeting people and you're speaking and that's your dream life? So let's build that. But yeah, to your point, we often don't spend the time or we're afraid to spend the time because we think, oh, it's not realistic. We almost talk ourselves out of it before we even put pen to paper.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One of the first calls that I have with prospective clients, we do like our intro call, and then I say, we're going to do, it's called the 45-minute dream builder call. And I give them homework and I say, I want you to think about for all of these different time periods in your life, what are your big goals and dreams? And they look at me and they're like, oh, and I'm like, I want you to have fun with it. I want it to be this exciting thing and like have a glass of wine, have a cup of coffee, like whatever is your Zen place and write it all out. There's no judgment, there's no whatever. And they, I will say a majority of people, when I work with them on this, they were like, I've never thought of this before.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's funny. It's a very similar exercise to when I first started speaking. I was working with a coach, and her thing was, I need you to build that dream.
Mhm.
And she's like, be audacious, like be those big ideas. Like for me, it was, I want to be on Oprah's own series. Like I want to have that right out there. And when you start to put that out there, you start to manifest the things and you start to find people who are going to help you with those dreams. And you start to shed the people who aren't going to help you with those dreams, right? Which is just as equally important.
Which is one of my favorite quotes is the Brene Brown, like people in the cheap seats, they don't get a say. I definitely butchered it, but that is something I live by every day because back to the unhiding thing, I have even people in my immediate family, unfortunately, who sit and look back and they're like, you're crazy for starting your own business. Why would you do this? What's wrong with you? And I'm like, I'm happier than ever. I'm healthier than ever. I make more money than you go through it all. And it's like, you have to unhide from who you are and also from who everybody wants you to be.
Yes. And that's you hit on something so much, Caroline, because I think we get so many messages about what success looks like. We get so many messages of who you're supposed to be. And what was amazing is my father, when I was starting to build this, he said, just have fun. Like this is supposed to be fun. And I'm like, because I think we get also trapped in, oh, I got to do this the right way. I got to be that person. Even when we're doing something different, we still have those expectations on ourselves. And so we still hide, right? Because we think we have to be this person. I was even hiding, and I think I still do it to a little bit of an extent, hiding behind my keynote speech. Like it had to be perfect. It had to be this, like it had to be right, send the right message exactly. And that's not fun for me. Like that makes me feel like I could just be a robot and just deliver it. And that's not what hiding and unhiding is about. Unhiding is joy. It's freedom. It is literally taking risks and having and being able to have conversation with people so that because when we unhide, it allows someone else to do that too. When we talk about money, right? When I say, hey, I'm not doing well this month, it is such a relief to the other person to be like, oh my God, me neither. Like, I don't have to hold up this facade or this pretense of, oh, well, I'm doing really well and you're doing really well. Let's just, that's not real
Yay, let's just high
competition.
five. Yeah.
Right. And the same extreme goes to the extreme goes the other way too, is when we dumb ourselves down, right? And we don't share our successes because we're afraid that someone will say, oh, they're too cocky or they're too, they so self-aggrandizing.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the answer either. Like it's how do we share how do we allow ourselves to share our successes as well and have people around us that support them and cheer us on?
It's funny, as you were saying that too, I was like, it goes, but you took the words right out of my mouth. It's both extremes, right? We sit there and it's like, we either feel like we have to be like, oh man, like it's so tough. Like, everyone too, when they say building a business, it's so hard. Some days it's fantastic and it's great. And you might catch me on one of those days or one of those hours. And then on other days, I'm like, this is fantastic. This is amazing. And it goes back and forth and back and forth. But being honest about where you are in that moment, like how many times do we see somebody and we're like, how are you? Oh, good. How are you?
Yeah, all the time. Fine. Oh,
Always.
I'm good. I'm good. I'm
And then
fine.
you sit there and you're like, okay.
Yeah. And that's a way that it shows up for sure, even in the workplace, right? Like we hide in terms of not saying we're fine when we're not, when we could actually use support from our manager or from our coworkers. That's one piece. We hold back in terms of even giving an idea in a meeting or asking a question because we're afraid of that rejection or judgment. We
Yeah.
even sometimes change. I mean, Caroline, what's so interesting in the work that I do around hiding and unhiding is people even change the way that they speak and act and dress to show a persona that is really uncomfortable. When you have to hide so much, it is exhausting and it is lonely and it keeps you feeling disconnected from yourself and from others. We don't, the thing is, what's so amazing about this work is think about this. We hide to fit in.
Mhm.
And yet we're not really fitting in or accepted because we're hiding. So people don't really get a chance to know us. So the thing that I often talk about is we hide, when we unhide, we actually connect with people in such a unique way because we get to share our struggles so that people can also let down their guard.
And you can feel the difference. Like I even feel like when you and I have a conversation, like I know that you're so we I hate the term authentic and genuine. Like it's gotten a little, it's almost lost its meaning at this point. But it's being vulnerable and being just you versus that facade that you have to put on. And as soon as you said it too, like I was that person. I worked in a corporate office. I spent over 5 years working in Manhattan. And I remember like I used to like wear the navy blue suit because let me not. And one day I was like, I've had enough. And I wore like a pink, bright color dress to the office. And this one guy stopped me and he was like, oh, we're feeling a little bright and colorful today, aren't we? And I'm like, I really am. And it like bothered them so much. But I was so happy. And I'm like, why? Why am I shrinking myself down? Why am I hiding from who I really am? So you've just validated me a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, no, and thank you for sharing that because I think you hit a word that also resonates a lot, which is that shrinking,
Yeah.
right? We hide, we shrink, we wither.
Hmm.
We think we have to be smaller than we are, and it absolutely keeps us playing in the shadows of our life rather than being big and bold or just being ourselves. We don't have to be all out there. We can just be ourselves because that's where the joy comes.
I completely agree. Did you watch Grey's Anatomy? Were you a Grey's Anatomy person?
I was years ago when it kind of
Okay.
first started, and then they lost me at some point, but tell me why.
That's fair. I have an alarm that actually goes off on my phone every day at 12:15. And this is how you know I work in a male dominated industry because this resonates with me so much. And there is a quote from Grey's Anatomy, and it's right when Christina Yang is leaving the hospital for the last time. And one of the last things she says to Meredith is, don't make yourself small, like to make him bigger. Like he's not the son you are. And I like that
Yeah.
one just hit me in the gut. And being in such a male dominated industry, I have that reminder every single day because can't tell on camera, I'm very short. So when I go into a lot of rooms, I feel physically small. So I have that reminder that when I walk in there, I, stand up a little taller. I get that extra half an inch in and show up fully as who I am rather than trying to shrink down and hide in the back and not bother anyone.
I love that. I love that quote. It might be my new 12-15 routine as
Yeah,
well, just to
do
show
it.
how do we show up, right? Because
Hmm.
we make others so much, and I think I don't even know if it's only male dominated. Like I think we do it in the speaking industry, right? In terms of that person has more successful. So I'm just not gonna, I probably am not that valuable. We do it when we're even thinking about our own businesses, when we're networking. Maybe this person won't be so interested. So, and I think we do it with other women too.
Hmm. I find it amazing how many women I do most of my practice is virtual. So a lot of women they'll like lean into me physically on Zoom and they start to whisper. and they'll go, this is it when we're starting to working together, and they're like, they whisper and they're like, do I make the right amount of money? Like, you see everyone's compensation. Like, do you think I make the right amount? Like, should I be getting more? And I'm like, the I appreciate that they have, the safety and security to ask me, but the fact that they're whispering, they feel the need to make themselves so small in that moment, and they don't know who else to trust and ask breaks my heart. I like so appreciate the salary transparency people that are out there because it opens up that conversation, but to see how we shrink ourselves in when we're talking about money, compensation, equity, it kills me.
I had a boss, Caroline, who told me when after he would give me a raise, he's like, and don't tell anyone.
No.
Don't tell. Oh, always. Like that was his thing. Like, this is just you, like whatever. Don't tell anyone. And then we all kind of got smart enough because we realized he was saying that to all of us. And we're like, well, what are you making? Like, so when we like, yeah, where is that transparency in terms of those conversations? And I'm probably guilty of it too as a manager and a boss, right? Like because salary, we were taught an old school way of thinking about money and about compensation and worth, all of those pieces. And yet, how do we think about actually performance?
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
What is one thing to kind of put the bow on this conversation that somebody, or two things, I won't limit you, that somebody can take today to start unhiding from their money, from their wealth, I always talk about my tagline is financial planning to build your dream life, how to unhide from that dream life and that money.
yeah, I would say the first probably piece that I would offer, and it is probably twofold. One is write it down, like start writing it down and start the conversation with yourself, because that's the first place to start. And that's really my first step in unhiding is acknowledging it, that self-awareness. What is your relationship to money? Like when you think about it, and I think you have tools of those conversations, even the one that you talked about with your dream life and what it would money look like at different pieces. It's starting that journey, like having that conversation with yourself. And who are you afraid to talk about money with, right? Who's easy to talk about money with? That's that inviting people in part and building community. And I think the second piece to the advice is start small. This doesn't have to happen overnight. Like you're not going to unhide and flip a switch and all of a sudden start talking about money. And because money is something that we have been conditioned around, we have history around. So start small, start with yourself. That's the place I would start. And think about, I ask the question always, what are you hiding? And I would add on to that, given this conversation, what are you hiding about money?
Woo. Okay, I'm gonna actually do my own. I love that as also like a journal prompt. So I'm gonna do some journaling around that today because even, it's work I do on myself every single day. So what are you unhiding from when it comes to your money? Okay, I love that.
What are you hiding? Because
Yeah.
and it's that space, and then and then the other side to that is, where are you unhiding? Like just like you said, like, where do you unhide? Who do you trust with it? Who do you not? Just starting to explore where are those relationships that you can start to have those conversations about money. Just like those roommates I had who money was not an emotional thing. We could talk about it and it felt safe.
That's awesome. That is amazing. I like to end with one final question. What is something that you do every single day that makes you feel wealthy?
Ooh,
Mhm.
that and I need that. And I feel like that is a journal prompt for Ruth Rathblott right now.
There we go. You and I have some writing to do.
Yeah, definitely. I think the thing that I started this year in the new year, January 3rd, I actually started it because I looked last night, is every day at the end of the day, I write down 3 wins of my day toward my business or 3 things that I did
Yeah.
that are wins. And that I think keeps me from being like, oh, I didn't get anything done today, or I
Mhm.
don't have, that the scarcity mindset that comes up. But that win piece allows for abundance to be like, okay, so you did stuff, like you reached out, you took that walk, you went to that networking event. Like those are things that are contributing to your business and to your wealth.
It's so funny you said that because literally this morning, I just started a notes thread in my phone, and it was from a book that I'm reading. And it was like, are you writing down every day something good that happened to you? So you're always looking for the good and the positivity. So that's so funny. I just started that this morning. So to hear you say that, I'm like,
Yeah.
Okay. This is my
No,
sign to get this.
absolutely. My day ends with that, and my day starts with a gratitude practice of three things. I can only really handle three things. Most of
Yes.
us can only handle three things. And so it's three things I'm grateful for in the morning. And then at night, it's the three wins for the day, the three things. So but it's a good book. They're good bookends. And I get upset, Caroline, when I don't do it. Like if I miss a day, I'm like, how did you miss yesterday? Why did you not write? I mean, it's literally next to my bedside, so I'm not sure how I miss it. But yeah, there, and it's like, okay, well, so write it now when you think of it.
Right. And or just like put it somewhere and then you can rewrite it if you're out, write in your
Yeah.
phone and then translate it later into your journal wherever you want to keep it.
And I think that's the thing is I think there's something between the hand and the heart in terms
Mm,
of connection of writing it down that is so important that I learned years ago from a woman who wrote The Artist's Way is this idea of pen to paper and why that's so important.
I agree. I'm a pen and paper girl. So thank you so much for coming on, Ruth. If people want to connect to you, talk more about Unhiding, read your books, which everyone needs to grab a copy of both of them. Where is the best way for everyone to connect with you?
I would say my website's a great place to start, ruthrathblott.com. And then the other place I spend a lot of time, Caroline, is on LinkedIn. So Ruth Rathblott is the best place. I talk a lot there. I ask questions there, but that's a great space.
Awesome. And I will make sure all of those are linked here in the show notes. And thank you everyone for joining both of us today. And we will see you next week. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks.